Okay, we are live now. We can start.
Good evening and a warm welcome to you all to yet another session on gender and sexuality with Enajuri. At the outset, I would like to brief our new audiences about Enajuri. Enajuri means the bond of love. It signifies unconditional love. And it is this bond of unconditional love for his native land that brought back Milind Datta, the founder of Enajuri from the US, to start a non-profit organization in 2018 which engages and promotes numerous initiatives that are striving for social change, honing leadership skills and building entrepreneurship capabilities in the Northeast, including Assam, are to name a few. For the last 2 years, we have been engaging with speakers from various fields via virtual media to create a network among the people working in the region. Today, we are in conversation with Breeana. Breeana is going to talk about her journey, a queer single women's parenting journey. Breeana Blalock is a sexual violence advocate. She is an individual and group counselor and coordinator at Mattapan Leadership Academy. She co-designed Afghan resettlement program for over 200 families. She is the founder of the Sober Women's Treatment Partnership. Welcome, Breeana, and we look forward to listening all about your wonderful journey. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So greetings to everyone who's listening, and thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. And I want to say thank you very much for inviting me to speak. It's a privilege, and also to acknowledge that I am here in Assam, in Guwahati, that I do not speak Assamese, so I understand that it might be a challenge for some of you with language, but I really appreciate, as a non-Assamese person and a American, to be given this space to be able to share my journey. So as you all can see, my journey is going to be shared about how I have become a queer single parent by choice. And I will start from the beginning. So in total, it's been about a 7-year process. Currently, I'm 42 years old. And even in the US, that's considered quite old to be a parent. Specifically a female, there's a lot of social pressure to get married, whether you're specifically for cis hetero couples, but even in the queer community, there's a pressure to assimilate to a heteronormative lifestyle. And my decision to be a parent is solely mine. And to be able to make that choice is also a privilege, to have control over my body, to decide if I want to have children or not. So I want to acknowledge that as well, because I think it's very important. There are a lot of people that do not get the opportunity to decide what happens to their body. And so let's see, yeah, so I was about 35 years old. And one of the first things that I did was I went to what's called a reproductive endocrinologist. And I have been fortunate enough to have medical insurance to be able to pay for a lot of these things, because it's also incredibly expensive. And so what I did with the reproductive endocrinologist, oh, I think that might be my child. Someone is watching them currently. Milind, do you want to go? Okay. So my child will probably be joining us for a little bit because we are very close. Someone is watching them and they are very unhappy about it. So yes, so I was about 35 years old and I went to a reproductive endocrinologist. And what that entails is, so as a cis female, one of the things that they suggested was that I do an egg count when I am ovulating to find out if I even have enough quality eggs to even get pregnant. And so when I was 35 years old, they said there were about 8 to 10 eggs on each side. And so I thought that's pretty good. And I remember the woman was asking me a lot of questions like, so you're doing this by choice, right? And you're doing this by choice. And she kept saying that, and it felt very strange to me. And I said, well, what do you mean I'm doing it by choice? And she said, well, you're a single parent, right? By choice. And it almost felt like there was a stigma with it. Like, how dare I, as a female, decide to raise my child without a male, without a partner. And this was a female doctor who was asking me this. And I said, currently, I do not have a partner, and this is something that I want to do in my life. And needless to say, I never went back to her. And I didn't need to go back to her, but that really, I remember that experience and thinking that if people aren't very secure in what they want to do with their parenting, they can be dissuaded a lot by medical professionals. And here, I'm going to grab my oh, so this is my child. This is Amado Maruk. They are 8 months old. And they will be joining us for a little bit. And I use they and them pronouns for Amado Maruk, and I'll get more into that in a little bit later in the journey. So after I went to the reproductive endocrinologist, I then started reaching out to different people who I would want to be a sperm donor or be a partner with me in raising a child. And I was very selective in terms of who I wanted. So I am a mixed race individual. My mom's side of the family is white and from England, and my dad's side is from Palau, an island in the Pacific, and it's part of Micronesia. And so my dad is an islander, but I am very, very light and very white passing. And so my dad was adopted. I didn't know anything about his culture or, you know, him growing up, and neither did he. So I knew that when I had a child, that it's very important to me that they know about their grandfather's culture in addition to my mom's culture. And so I ended up going to Palau, but before I did, I posted on a Facebook page looking for sperm donors and looking for gay men who would like to co-parent with me. Now, keep in mind, I have never met any of these people, and I'm just posting pretty much as a stranger, saying, hello, you know, Palauan queer community. I'm a mixed race Palauan. I'm a cis female. I want to have a child, and I want to co-parent preferably with a gay Palauan male. So our child can be raised by queer parents. And I actually got some responses back. I was very surprised because this is, you know, thousands of miles across the ocean. And it's a very strange and bold request. And to get some people that are interested was very exciting. And so as part of my journey, it was to go to Palau to research my dad's family, but also to meet up with some of these gay men who had expressed interest in co-parenting and having a child together. And it got narrowed down to one person. And I ended up flying from Koror, which is the capital of Palau, to Guam a day or two after Christmas. And I thought I was ovulating, and come to find out, sadly, I was not. But I ended up engaging in sex with this gay male that I had never met before, who is not even remotely attracted to women, who has done nothing more than maybe kiss some women. So it was a very strange experience. We had never, we just messaged, and here I am flying thousands of miles across the ocean after saving a lot of money, taking time off from work to be able to meet this person and potentially start a family together. So I knew at a month or two after that I did not get pregnant. And so I started contacting some of the other men, single men and couples that had responded to my posting to see if any of them were interested. And ultimately it turned out that some people had changed their minds or they didn't get back to me. And so this is I'm probably 37 or 38 by this point. And I was getting discouraged because who I wanted to co-parent with was getting smaller and smaller. The options were incredibly small. And so I thought this might not happen. I need to come up with a plan B, because for cis females, as they get older, the quality of their eggs gets less, and there's less chance that they can be pregnant. So that was also in the back of my mind. And at this point, I was living in Boston, Massachusetts, and I started researching sperm banks to go with a sperm donor. And I probably searched for about a year, maybe a year and a half, until I found the sperm donor that I chose. And it's very expensive. And even if you have fertility coverage, which I'll talk about later, you still have to pay. If you go with a sperm donor, you have to pay out of pocket. And for 4 vials of sperm, each vial you use just once. When I was ovulating, I used 1 vial and that was it. And each vial, which is about, the size of a little bit of your pinky, is $1,000. So to buy 4 vials, which is how many they sell them, in a kit, was $4,000. And that's a lot of money. So once I knew that amount, I knew, okay, I'm going to have to get more jobs. I'm going to have to figure something out. And so during this process, I had been telling my friends along this journey, but I hadn't told anyone in my family. And part of that is because I was raised by a single mother, and she had told me how hard it was. And I thought that if I told her what I was doing, she would try and convince me not to do it, because she would say it would be incredibly hard. And I didn't want any negativity. And I didn't think she would be negative, but I think she would be more concerned and try and be very rational with me. And I didn't want any of that. So I eventually, like I said, I eventually found this sperm donor, and they ended up being Micronesian and Mexican. And so, as I said before, my dad is from Palau, an island in Micronesia, and there's multiple islands in Micronesia. So the fact that I found someone that was part Micronesian was very exciting. And yeah, so this is Amato Maru. And so I first started off with this process that's called IUI, which stands for intrauterine insemination. And it's a lot cheaper and it's not as intense. And I ended up doing 4 IUI cycles at Fenway Health, and Fenway Health is a queer clinic in Boston, and they have I believe it's called Alternative Families Program. So they work specifically with the trans community, gender non-conforming community, gay men, lesbian, everyone in the community who wants to become a parent, whether you carry that child yourself or you adopt or you work with surrogates. And it's an amazing, amazing clinic. And so what IUI is where you take a ovulation kit and you basically pee on it like a pregnancy test. And it tells you when you are ovulating, when you have the most eggs in your cycle. And so I did that a couple of times, and those also are not cheap. Those you have to pay for out of pocket. And for one kit, it's $50. So that's an extra $50 for the month. And then there's some pills that you can take as well to help your body increase ovulation. And there you go, Maru. They might be joining us again. And so I started off doing that because that was the easiest to do. And so unfortunately, even though I had enough eggs, I did not get pregnant those 4 times. And so the process would be I'd take these pills for a month. Then when I knew that I was ovulating, I would go into the clinic and they would inseminate me with the sperm that was frozen there. And so it was very disheartening because I thought, okay, after I had used 3 out of the 4 vials, I had 1 vial left. And I thought, this is my final chance. But then I contacted the sperm bank and I found out that there was 1 more set left, which is 4 vials. So I bought that. I put it on my credit card. I maxed out my credit card. And I bought the remaining so I had 5 vials left. And so I tried 1 more cycle of IUI, and just to go into the clinic for them to inseminate me, which takes 10 minutes, is $100. So there's a lot of costs with it. And after that didn't take, I had relocated to Seattle, Washington as part of my graduate studies in global social work. And so one of the reasons I picked Seattle was because I know they had a lot of fertility centers there. And so I started researching them, and I learned about IVF, which is in vitro fertilization, where they take eggs and sperm and they fertilize them basically in a petri dish, and then they freeze them. And if after day 5 they have fertilized, then that is a quality, it's not quite an embryo yet, but it's at a good stage where it can then be inserted into whoever is going to carry, that child and be the gestational parent. So someone had mentioned that to me at the fertility clinic, and I thought, okay, tell me more about it. And I had never heard of IVF or knew how detailed it was. But after I heard about it, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, because you take anywhere from 5 to 10 medications. You have to give yourself anywhere from 3 to 5 shots every day in the thigh, in the stomach, in the arm, of all of these different hormones that do all of these different things, as well as go in for blood work, go in for ultrasounds. It's very, very detailed. Every day you're doing at least 3 things for a month. Plus there's the cost. And so at this point, I didn't have fertility insurance, and I didn't know there was fertility insurance. The clinic didn't tell me this right away. So I ended up getting an extra credit card. I depleted all of my savings. I even applied for some fertility grants and loans to be able to cover it. And so the first cycle I paid myself, and with all of these different things, and that was $27,000. And that doesn't even include the medication. The medication I had to pay for myself as well, and that was about $5,000 for 1 month. So this is over $30,000 for 1 month. And keeping in mind that's so much money. And after a month, me trying to get pregnant, it didn't happen. So it was very disheartening to think I spent all of this money, and I started having a lot of doubts and thinking, am I supposed to be a parent? And feeling guilty about spending this kind of money, when I could be doing so many other things for so many other people, and thinking, is this selfish? The world's already overpopulated. Maybe I should just adopt. And I talked to some of my friends, but at the time, all of my friends didn't have any kids, and didn't really know what to say other than just, they were just being supportive in general. And so I maybe thought about it for 2 days, and it didn't sit with me. It didn't feel right. And I thought, there's got to be another way. I feel so strongly that I need to be a parent, that I want to birth a child. I have the physical body to be able to birth a child. I want that experience. I want to raise a child. I want to do it all. And I didn't want to settle for that experience. Plus, I just didn't want to have my experience end there and be so negative, be so in debt, and to, not be pregnant or not have a child to show for it. So when I was talking to the clinic, I said, it's going to take me a long time to pay off my credit cards, to save up this money. And I don't know if, talk to me about how much the storage is, and I'm trying to problem solve with them. And that's when someone said, well, have you thought about fertility insurance? And I said, what is that? And they said, well, there's a lot of employers that offer fertility insurance. And I said, you mean like health insurance, where you only pay a small amount and you get all this coverage? And they said, yes. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me that 2 months ago, when I was calling over the phone and paying with multiple credit cards and paying in installments, and talking about how I didn't have this money, and, selling things that are really important to me so I could do that? Why did no one tell me this ahead of time, that there's fertility insurance? And they didn't really have an answer for me. And that really bothered me, because I thought, how many other people, queer folks, people of color, people from marginalized identities and experiences that want to be parents, how many of them are not told about fertility insurance? And how many people are judged based on their material wealth, or, their education, or their age, when trying to become parents? And it really got me thinking about, yet again, how many people aren't in control of wanting to be parents, and how many people are parents but don't have to think about any of this. You know, if you, I am fortunate to be a cis female, so I can carry a child. You know, I have eggs, you know, I wouldn't have to go through all of these hoops like someone who is trans or someone who is gender nonconforming, or maybe, you know, had surgery, or, you know, wants to identify a certain way based on their gender identity and can't be a parent. And so I thought, this is really, really unjust, because there are so many amazing people in the queer community that are fabulous parents, that would be wonderful parents, but probably won't get the opportunity because a lot of these barriers, institutional barriers, but also because of homophobia, transphobia in the medical field. And then I was even more determined and thought, I really need to, as a, you know, a queer cis female, to make this happen. And so I started researching fertility insurance, and I also started researching other fertility clinics, because I thought, if they didn't tell me about some of these options, how are things going to be in the future if and when I get pregnant? And am I going to trust them that they're going to let me know all of the options? Or are there going to be some biases? You know, if I get pregnant, are they going to say, oh, so you're single, you don't have a partner? Unfortunately, the waiting lists were very long for other clinics. And so I just stayed with this particular clinic and worked with them. And it probably took about a dozen, at least 12 office visits for me to remind them that I am queer. No, my husband is not coming with me. No, my boyfriend is not coming with me. I am doing this by myself. And no, I don't need a lecture about, you know, how to raise my child. So that was also very, very frustrating, to be going to a medical provider where it's really none of their business how I parent. Their job is to help me get pregnant and to guide me in a medical setting. Excuse me. So I will cut to the chase. And I ended up getting fertility insurance. Excuse me. And how that happened, and I can only speak from my experience in the US, but for those of you that are listening that are considering becoming parents, and you also are facing financial barriers, really big corporations offer fertility insurance. So Starbucks offers fertility insurance, as well as Amazon. And there's about 7 or 8 more. And I thought, so I'm living in Seattle, there's lots of coffee everywhere, but I don't drink coffee. I don't know anything about it. And I thought, no one's going to hire me at Starbucks when I don't even drink coffee or know anything about it. So I did some research and applied at Amazon. And excuse me. So I got a job at Amazon working in the warehouse. Also at this time, I had 2 other jobs, total, you know, part-time. And then this job at Amazon was full-time. And I was working 10-hour shifts, 4 days in a week, loading packages, everything that people order on Amazon. I was loading those into packages, putting them in trailers from the middle of the night till early morning. And it's very, very tiring work, but the fertility benefits kick in right away. So I didn't have to wait 30 days. I didn't have to pay anything extra. When I signed up for my health insurance, I basically just checked a box saying that, yes, I want fertility insurance. the actual fertility insurance I got is called Progeny, and they covered everything. They do IVF, they do IUI, they cover the medications. And how it works is, imagine, a pie, and each piece of the pie represents different procedures that you get. And so what's really good about Progeny is they don't cover a certain amount. Some fertility insurances cover only up to, 50,000 or 100,000, but Progeny covers up to a certain number of procedures, because every place is different in terms of how much they charge. And so I had tried 2 more IUI cycles and 1 IVF cycle. Now that I had insurance, I thought, let me start with the least restrictive, because as I mentioned before, IVF is very intense. You have to give all of these shots. You have to give them at a very specific time. You have to go in for blood work. If your hormone levels aren't good enough, even if you've taken shots, you've given yourself shots for a month, if your hormone levels aren't good, they're not going to recommend that you inseminate. So you could give yourself shots for a whole month, go into all these appointments, and then when you're ovulating, it's you're not likely to have success. So that happened to me. And so I did a total of 3 IVF cycles, and it was November of 2021. And that was so I had 1 vial of sperm left, and the particular donor I bought, donated sperm years ago. So there was no more chances. I had 1 left, and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do if this doesn't take, but it was the final cycle. And I ended up doing all the IVF medications again. And I went in on December. In November, they ended up taking eggs from me, and there were a decent amount of eggs. I can't remember exactly how many, but they, so what they do is they put you under anesthesia, and it's like you are getting I'm blanking on the term, but like you're getting an exam, and they use, they go in and they take a very, very small needle, they put it up into your ovaries, and they take the eggs out. It's probably like a 15-minute procedure. And then they put them in a petri dish, and they freeze them. And they ended up fertilizing my eggs with that sperm. And I remember it was early December of 2021. And they said, okay, so we're going to now fertilize these. And there's the possibility. So I think I maybe had 12 eggs that they got total. And I remember the technician, the reproductive team that I was working with saying, okay, so you have 12 eggs. Everyone always has some eggs that aren't strong enough. So, they're not going to make it. And so you'll probably start with 9 eggs. And then once we fertilize them with the sperm, not all of them make it through fertilization. So it might drop you down to, 6 or 7 possible embryos. But we recommend that you have at least 8 possible embryos, because we would, inseminate you with at least half of those, because they might not implant in your uterus. And so they said, we're not really going to know how many you have until at least day 3. And so I said, okay, you know, whatever we have to do. And so on day 3, they said, we have just the bare minimum, but with the thawing process, they said that also could be really traumatic. So we could either go with a smaller number on day 3 because we have some viable embryos now, or we could wait 2 days until day 5 and see if there's some that make it those extra 2 days. And if they do, those will be stronger. So um, the embryos on day 3 had a quality of like maybe 6 out of 10, but on day 5, the embryo qualities would be more like 8 or 9 out of 10. So I could take a risk and wait until day 5 and hope that the embryos were stronger genetically, or I could get inseminated on day 3 because there would be a higher number of embryos, but the quality might not be good. And so it was a really tough decision to think, do I wait until day 5 and have these embryos that are stronger genetically, that will have a healthier baby, but also at the same time, none of them could make it to day 5. So I could have some embryos on day 3 and I take a risk trying to make it to day 5, and then some of them could not make it, or I inseminate on day 3, I get pregnant, but then because the embryos aren't as strong genetically, I could be more likely to miscarry. So either way, I thought, well, either way, I'm losing some embryos. So I didn't feel there was really a win situation there because there was risk either way. And I thought, I feel, because I am older now, because I'm now 41, and so many people were saying, once you reach 40, you know, you really shouldn't be having kids, and it's so old. And so I felt a lot of the pressure because of my age. And I thought, I just, you know, I'm going to trust my instinct and hope that some of the embryos make it to day 5. And so they did. And I went in and it was very simple and easy. And they inseminated me. And I left about 15 minutes later, and they said, just relax for the next week. Don't do anything strenuous. And I remember I was thinking, you know, like, should I even be standing up? Is something going to fall out of me? You know, do I need to lie a certain way? And they said, no. But even still, for the next week after that, I would, whenever I was sitting, I would raise my legs. I would sleep elevated. I found myself crossing my legs a lot, all of these things that seem so silly now, but because at the time it was, you know, there was no other options for me in terms of being a parent the way I wanted to be. So I was very aware of all of this. And so what happened next was 2 or 3 weeks later, I took a pregnancy test to see if my body had started to produce hormones to know that it was pregnant. And it did. So the pregnancy test showed up positive, but then to be 100% sure, they want you to come in and do blood work to see if there's a pregnancy hormone, which is called HCG. If that shows up at a certain level, then it's more guaranteed. And so in between taking the pregnancy test and doing the blood test, I ended up flying to South Florida for my mom's wedding. And I did not tell her, but technically that flight was my child's first time on an airplane. I was, you know, about 3 or 4 weeks pregnant, and I didn't feel anything at all related to the pregnancy, but it was very surreal to think that I am spending time with my mom, who I'm incredibly close to. She's getting married and I'm pregnant and I haven't told her. And so my decision for not telling anyone for the first couple of months was because there's such a high rate of miscarriage that I didn't want to tell people. And then what if I miscarried, or what if something happened and then I wasn't pregnant anymore? It would be too tough for me emotionally. And so I waited, and till I was about 3 or 4 months. And around that same time, some of my jobs ended, and I did not have an easy pregnancy. I lost a lot of weight. I was sick all the time. I was very nauseous. I couldn't eat a lot of foods that I wanted. For me, the pregnancy impacted my digestion, and it was difficult to sleep. But everything else that a lot of other people get when they're pregnant, I didn't experience. For me, it was the nausea and not being able to sleep, and throwing up a lot and not having much of an appetite. So I ended up moving down to South Florida to be with my mom, and she just thought I was having a lot of intestinal pains or that I was really depressed. She had no idea that I was pregnant. Like I said, I didn't tell her anything, and I wasn't showing that much either. And so when I was about 5 months pregnant, I ended up getting an ultrasound down in South Florida, and I had the pictures, and I ended up taking my mom to a farmer's market and giving her a card that had a picture of the ultrasound in it. And she was very confused and didn't understand it. She initially thought it was my ultrasound when I was a baby, but I never had any. And when she realized that I was pregnant and that she was going to be a grandparent, she was very shocked, but ultimately she was very supportive. And so I started doing research on where I was going to give birth and everything about having a baby. And I ended up finding a birthing center because I didn't want to go to a hospital. And I worked with doulas and midwives, and that was very important to me. All of the midwives that I worked with, at least half of them were queer. They were, most of them were women of color. And so that was also very important to me because there's huge racial disparities in terms of the quality of care gestational parents get, as well as birth workers. And so I was very intentional. And even though it was an hour drive from where I was living down to Miami, I drove down there for appointments. My mom drove down there with me. They were amazing. The place I ended up going with was called Magnolia Birth House. And just, seeing my child on ultrasounds and all kinds of things was really pretty phenomenal. Let me just do a time check real quick. What time is it? Oh, okay. All right. So,
So how did you feel? Like, how did you feel when you had the little one, with you?
Yes.
And
so,
yeah.
Yep. It even now, it's surprising to me. I will look at my child and think, I can't believe I have a child now. I can't believe I birthed a child. And that I am responsible for this little human being. And it's just such a powerful experience. I didn't get to share this, but I was also very intentional about the naming of my child, to have it represent all the cultures of my child. And as I said before, to use gender neutral pronouns. I did not want my child being raised with all types of gender stereotypes and me putting that on my child. I don't think it's right. Every parent, has their own journey. But for me, I was very specific from the get-go and saying, people need to use they and them pronouns for my child. But it's a wonderful experience. Yes.
So what made you decide to not assign a gender to your child? What is the basic behind it? Like, why did you choose that?
Yes. So I I'm a feminist. I've been a feminist for a very, very long time. And it was actually in a women's studies course that I learned the language of transgender, gender nonconforming, gender queer 20 years ago. And I really appreciated that. And I felt, oh, these are some words that describe beliefs that I have that I never even knew the language for. And how I was raised, how my mom was raised in a very patriarchal setting. It seemed very suffocating to me. It seemed very limiting. And after I came out, it was really important to me to have queer community. And so a lot of my friends have very different identities. And I think that I have this amazing opportunity as a parent to demonstrate and be a model for other parents, that you do not have to give in to societal pressure, that you don't have to dress your child in pink or blue, that you don't have to put these horrible bows on their head, that you are their parent, you are their protector, you are their advocate. And that, I just thought I would not want people making decisions for me. It doesn't matter what age you are, you should, there should be choices. And until my child is old enough to decide who they are, I will give them the space to decide who they are. To me, that's one of the amazing things and important things about being a parent, is that you provide your child with choices and opportunities. So it was never a question, regardless of the biological sex of my child. Their gender orientation is different. Oh, I can't hear you. It might still be on.
Yes.
There we go. Okay.
So it's like, I'm facing some network issues, so I'm just moving.
Okay.
So it's so nice, like, we have to know that, we have options. We have the options. Like, many a times we feel so stuck when we do not have the options, or people, we have to tell people that we want this option, or like we're being judged because we choose a particular option. So it's so nice to be not like, to have the freedom to choose all by yourself. So
it really is. Yes.
So
yeah,
how
but
do you
it
think
also is, I do want to say.
Yes, tell me.
Go ahead.
So
I was going to say, I also want to acknowledge too that it is a privilege that on my mom's side, and growing up in the US, the queer culture is out more. There is more visibility, there's more protection, there are more resources. So it's a lot easier for me to say, coming, with some educational privilege, coming with white passing privilege, coming with cis privilege. I have a lot of privileges that not everyone does. So I do acknowledge that for me to say I was going to raise my child with they and them pronouns and that's it, so many people would want that and can't do it. So that's, for each person, you have to figure out how you can do things safely. And luckily, a lot of my family and friends, all of my friends have been supportive, and most of my family has. Some don't know, they don't understand it, but that, there are some cultural differences definitely on my dad's side, in terms of, gender and confusion about they and them. So it's so very important to have support. If your own family won't support you, to find support so that you can raise your child in a way where they do have choices like that, and you can have the identities that you want.
So what do you suggest, like, for people who do not have the support, and like they would love to do things the way they want, because everybody should have the choice to do things the way they want. So,
Yes.
so many
Yeah.
times we are stuck, like, every culture is different. India, if you say, we are driven by so many cultures and traditions, it sometimes becomes difficult to express ourselves. So what do you suggest we do when we like cannot express ourselves, but then we do? Like, how do you put through your message?
So I would say, in all honesty, I might not be the best person to answer that because I am coming from a place of privilege and I can only share my true experience and what I did, and knowing that as much as I would love for other people to have the freedoms that and privileges that I did, I know that they don't. So I will put out there what I did, and hopefully there are some ways that people can be creative. I have found that working with birth workers, midwives, doulas, as opposed to staff at hospitals, and obstetricians, more Western doctors are not as open-minded in terms of gestational parents and trans parents or gender non-conforming parents. So finding what many people call alternative birth workers or alternative birthing, but really it's not, because there were doulas and midwives thousands of years before there were hospitals. So it's not really an alternative, but in the US, it's seen that way. And then also going online. So there are pros and cons to the internet, but I have found there's one group I'm a part of that's called Gender Creative Parenting. And that is for folks, regardless of the parents' identities and orientations, they are choosing to raise their children gender free until they choose on their own. And so that Facebook page is amazing for, anywhere from giving suggestions of books to read, to clothing, to, activities that you can do, how you can start talking about orientation and identities with your children, from birth, as well as queer, trans, gender non-conforming, LGBTQI parenting groups. They have pregnant parenting groups for the queer community. Then they have groups from different states, and really going on some of those social media sites until you can find people close by. If you have financial privilege and financial wealth, if you are able to move, that would be a suggestion, but I understand that's not realistic for a lot of people. But finding allies, that if they are not queer, that finding allies that have accepted and celebrated, people's queer identities, trans identities, going to them first, so that you have support from someone that supports you as, in your gender identity and your orientation, and talk to them about giving you support as a parent and how you want to raise your kids. Because you can't do it alone. It's too much. It's definitely too much. And then just start trying to make connections online and within the queer community, even other queer members that, of the community that don't have kids. At least your children, or when people are pregnant, they will be around other queers, because it's so important to have community around. So those would be some of my suggestions in
To reach
terms of,
out to people, like-minded people.
yes.
Yes. So one more question, like during this entire journey of your pregnancy, uh, what are the hurdles? Like, for example, in India, uh, we we face little hurdles, like, when we go for ultrasound, we are supposed to enter the name of the partner, like, and like, is it same there too? And like, how do you like walk through the documentation and like,
Yes.
how does it work?
Yes. So in the US, it's not as restrictive. There have been trans and gender nonconforming folks, and even lesbian, bisexual, gay men, everyone in the community has been advocating to get documents changed to, and a lot has been improved with uh, same-sex marriage. And having that legal in the US. And I know that India is in a battle for that right now in terms of, will there be a ban or not? Will it be passed? So I think getting government recognition, as frustrating as it is, will help a lot. But a lot of it is advocating for yourself and having to be very bold and assertive, and to the point of frustration of going in and saying, please respect my pronouns. These are my pronouns. This is how I identify. And you have to keep doing other people's work, which is very frustrating. And so it's not easy. And that's why it's so important to have support. And so in terms of documentation, yeah, so I didn't, at least in the hospital, I ended up giving birth in a hospital. I didn't want to, but for medical reasons, I had to. And so when they assign social security cards and numbers and birth certificates, there's a space there. Even now, that in some hospitals, it'll say husband's name. It won't even say partners, it'll say husband's name. And I'm a very assertive person, and not everyone feels comfortable saying, this doesn't represent everyone. You all need to change your forms. It's not up to me to tell you how to be more knowledgeable. You all should be doing your work. So it's very frustrating, even for someone with the privileged identities that I have, and the assertiveness and the confidence that I have. So that's why, for folks that are single, or maybe that have multiple partners, that you go to these appointments not by yourself, and that that whoever goes with you is the person that says, okay, let's see how you have us listed. Have you misgendered us? Have you used the correct pronouns? Going over the birth plan, all of this stuff ahead of time, because the person who is pregnant is the most important. They should not have to be worrying about how antiquated and homophobic and transphobic and ignorant, a lot of medical staff are. So having someone else to do all of that for you, so you can just take care, of your body while you're a gestational parent.
But then sometimes you're like all alone, and it's really frustrating making them correct. You're like, no, leave that space empty. I am the single parent. Yeah, leave this space empty. Yeah, like, that is not the correct pronouns. So we are already we're already going through pregnancy, and then at the time, like, correcting people, it becomes like, yeah. But then I get your message, like, even though they might, some people might not do their job of like being updated with all the, all the forms are not updated. So like we have to subtly somehow, put through the message that like, no, yeah, that is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Yes. And that, that's where I would suggest working with a doula who is there just for support for whoever the gestational parent is. And and in the US, there are so many queer birth workers. There's a doula collective of queer and trans doulas. So, so many in so many different states. And some of them, it is very specific to the US, but I do know that there are queer, trans, gender nonconforming birth workers all over the world. It's just sometimes you have to do a lot of work to find someone who knows someone else, who knows someone else, who sends a message. So starting things early, you know, as early as possible, and
To
just
have
being
a
very persistent.
accepting set of people around us, like who makes us comfortable, like, you know, who understand the sentiment. That is what the doula you're saying, right?
Exactly. Yes. And they are there purely for the gestational parent throughout the whole pregnancy, throughout the whole birth, to advocate, for the birthing parent when they're in labor, to make sure that, like in my situation, for someone to, for the doula to go through all of the forms, to tell hospital staff all of these things, that is the job of the doula, to do that. And they are amazing. I can't recommend doulas and midwives enough. They're just amazing people. But in the US, there are ways for you to not put a gender down and not put a child's name down on a birth certificate right away. I mean, they prefer you to, and it makes delays, but no one can legally force you to do a lot of those things, because you are the parent, and you can just say, I will fill it in later. I'll do it
too. Like
later.
India has the system too. We don't have to fill up the name right away. We get time.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
so we get time. It was so nice listening to your journey. It's like, I'm overwhelmed, like with so much of patience and, consistency. You have like decided you will, like, be a single parent, and then like you have gone for it, no matter how much ever obstacles you have faced, but you have stuck to it.
Yes.
And then that is what I hope, like, gives you fruit like this, like, the little one. So cute.
Yes.
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 So it was really nice. I hope I can sum up your entire session, and I can take hope two messages. One is like not to give up hope, and then to have a support system who understands, my sentiments during phases when I am going through my pregnancy, when I have such a decision made, so that like that support system is like making my entire phase easier.
Yes, definitely. And as much as possible, to not have finances be a barrier, whether you need to do crowdfunding or, connect with larger organizations. That I would encourage to people, do not let finances as much as possible be a barrier. There are ways to do it. I do know that the fertility insurance through Amazon covers people in other countries as well. I don't know about India, I apologize. But to do the research and to feel confident in your decisions as a parent, and to seek out that support, because we deserve it. We deserve to be parents. We're amazing parents in the queer community. I mean, I think oftentimes we're better than cis hetero parents, but I'm biased, but I think we bring so much to children for those of us that want to do it. So definitely don't give up, and let's show a lot of people how amazing we are as parents in the community.
I can second you definitely, because with so much struggle, when you like get something, I am sure we are like, we are giving the best. Like sometimes we have to, face the hurdle to get like, appreciate what we have. So I can second,
Yes.
like, that you will be a lovely parent. You're a lovely parent.
Thank you.
So that with that, we come to the end of today's session. Thank you so much, Breeana. It was lovely having you. And
Thank you.
that's all. Yeah. Good night.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Good luck, everyone.